Alright class, this video we will be talking about geometric sequences. A geometric sequence is a sequence of terms that have a common ratio between them. Now, a common ratio is when we multiply, when it's going to look like we're multiplying or dividing by the same number every time. But we always look at it as just multiplying, so if it looks like division, we're just going to be multiplying by a fraction. Now, to find the explicit formula, it is used to find the nth term of a sequence, and the explicit formula for a geometric sequence is a sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r to the n minus 1 power. A sub 1 is, of course, the first term, just like it was in an arithmetic sequence, and r stands for our common ratio. Those are the only two things that we have to replace until we're finding the nth term. Now, for the recursive formula, you have a sub 1 equals whatever the first term is, then a sub n equals a sub n minus 1 times r. And again, r is your common ratio. So, only thing that we're going to do when we're doing a recursive formula, just like when we did arithmetic sequences, you're going to plug in whatever the first term is, and then for r, you'll plug in whatever the common ratio is. All right, now, so first we're going to look at the sequence 4, 8, 16, 32, and to find the common ratio, we may be able to look at this and immediately say, okay, I am multiplying by 2 every time. But if you are having trouble, always do your second term divided by your first term. So if I do my second term divided by my first term, I get 8 divided by 4, which is 2. So we can get it either one of those two methods. All right, this one we have 256, 64, 16, and 4. Now this one looks a little more difficult to see right away. I know that I'm going down, so again, it looks like I'm dividing by the same number, but remember I told you earlier that if it looks like it's division, we're multiplying by a fraction. So if we do our second term divided by our first term, like we said before, we'll have 64 over 256. If we put that in our calculator, we'll get the fraction 1/4. And so in this situation, our common ratio is 1/4. So now this one, we're going to find the common ratio, then we're going to create the explicit formula, and then find the seventh term. So if I look here, my common ratio is 3 over 6, which is 1/2 or 5/10. And we can write it either way, it doesn't matter. So now, to find my explicit formula, I'm first write it, and then I'm going to plug in my first term and my common ratio. So my first term is 6, and my ratio is 1/2. So I have a sub n is equal to 6 times 1/2 over n minus 1, or to the n minus 1 power, I'm sorry. And then to find the seventh term, I'm just going to plug 7 in for n, and I will actually plug that into my calculator and get that 7 is, at the seventh term is 94, what is that, thousandths. So 0.094. All right, this next one, finding doing the same thing. I want you to pause the video and try to do it yourself, and then go through it on the video with me. Now, to find a common ratio, do negative 12 divided by negative 4. We get 3. Create an explicit formula. My first term is negative 4. My common ratio is 3. So plug those two numbers in. And then to find the 10th term, we're going to plug 10 in for n, put it in our calculator, and we get negative 78,732. All right, now this one is set up a little different. The fifth term is 1,792. The common ratio is 4. Write the explicit formula. So we're going to take the explicit formula and plug in the information we know. We know that the fifth term is 1,792. N is 5. And we know the N is 5 because we're looking for the fifth term. And the common ratio they told us was 4. So we're going to plug that information in. And so we have 1,792 is equal to ace of 1 times 4 to the 5 minus 1 power, or to the fourth power. And then we have to just solve for ace of 1. And so when we do that, we'll get 7. And remember, anytime I have one variable that I need to solve for, I can put that in num solve in my calculator, and I can get 7 that way. And so after I find out the first term, then I can write my explicit formula. All right, during the month of October, a few teachers decided to spread some holiday fun by starting a game of getting booed. On the first day, 3 teachers were given boo bags and directions to boo 2 other teachers. For every teacher followed directions to boo 2 teachers with candy and a sign, find the following. So we want to find the explicit formula in the first 4 terms. So in order to find the explicit formula, I of course need my first term and my R. Well, my first term and my first term is 3 because we started with 3 teachers, and each teacher was told to find to go boo 2 people. So that means that we would double. So my R is 2. So then I plug those 2 numbers in. I get my explicit formula. Ace of n is equal to 3 times 2 to the n minus 1 power. And then I would plug, to find my first 4 terms, I would just basically plug in 1, 2, 3, and 4, or I could create a table and where x is 1, 2, 3, and 4, write down the y values, and I would get 3, 6, 12, and 24.